Hey guys, it's Mr. Hing here. I hope you're all well. Today what we're going to be doing is patterns, okay? And we're going to be looking at constant difference and then constant ratio, as well as the question determining the general rule. All right. So let's have a look and see how do we answer or how do we detect and think about certain patterns, okay? So firstly, guys, there's a type of pattern that has a constant difference, okay? That is what is happening in the pattern. There is a constant difference in the pattern, and what that means is that it applies or it refers to when there's either addition of the same number between two consecutive numbers for the entire pattern, or if there is subtraction. Okay, so it's plus or subtraction. All right, so let's have a look at my first question over here. So my first pattern, it says 2 4 6 8, right? And what I want to highlight to you here, guys, is that when you look at, there's two things to look at. Either it's your the term number, which is the value. I want to use that word value, or you are looking at the term, the actual term, which is the position. Okay, the position of that number. So when I use the word term, I'm talking about the positioning. So the first term is 2. Okay, the first position, the value is 2. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with actually answering the questions together. So if I had to calculate the constant difference, what you do is you ask yourself, what is the difference, or what am I doing from the previous number to get to the next number? And as you can see, obviously we would be adding 2 over there, and similarly we would add 2 from 4 to 6 and add 2 from 6 to 8. Another way of thinking of it is you can take this number, right, the number in front, and subtract the number before it. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and that is also another way of looking at that. Okay, so let's have a look at number 2. Number 2 over here, we have -5, -1. So what am I doing to get from -5 to go to -1? I am plussing 4. And over here, again, I am plussing 4. And once again, I am plussing 4. So you can see that these two patterns over here, pattern number 1 and pattern number 2, they have a constant difference. Okay, let's go and answer these questions quickly. So number 1, what is the constant difference of pattern number 1? So my constant difference would be +2. And for pattern number 2, my constant difference would be +4. Okay, guys, just as a little tip, or just to be more inclusive about patterns with constant differences, please remember that there can definitely be, if my pattern is like this, there can definitely be a constant difference that is negative, which would be -3, and we minusing 3 again. So I don't want you to kind of limit yourself and think that there's only positives. Okay, so then now the next question is, what is the fifth term, right? So guys, what did I say? If it says fifth term, it's talking about the fifth term over here, so the positioning, and what is the value going to be of the fifth term. So for number 1, you can obviously just do it in your head. We would just be adding 2 the whole time. So 8 plus 2 is 10. So that would be the fifth term for question number 1. For question number 2, the fifth term, there's 4 terms here, remember? Term 1, 2, 3, and 4. The fourth term number would be 7, sorry. So then if we plus 4 again, we would get our fifth term. So that would be 11. Okay, guys, so it's pretty straightforward. Let's have a look and answer this type of question where they say, now you need to describe what is happening. So describe the rule in your own words. So guys, in this case over here, you literally must describe it in your own words. So guys, what it should be more or less is you must definitely take into account what is happening. So obviously the constant difference, there's a pattern with a constant difference, and you put that into your answer. So for instance, number 1, you would say, to describe it in your own word, you would say add 2, or actually I prefer it when you write it in words because it says a word. So add 2 to the previous term. So that makes sense. So what's happening is for every previous term to get to the next term, you are adding 2. Okay, let's have a look at number 2. So obviously this one we would just say add 4 to the previous term. Okay. Right, guys, let's have a look at constant ratio. Now, guys, the explanation is very similar to constant difference. However, with constant ratio, it's dealing with timesing or dividing. Okay, it never incorporates plusing and minusing, okay, between two consecutive numbers. So for constant ratio over here, if we look closely, we'll see if I'm going from 4 to 8, I'm either, or negative 8, that's very important, I'm either minusing 12. But if I'm minusing 12 and I go here again, then I'm definitely not minusing 12. So it's definitely not a constant difference. But if I look and I say, what happens if I'm going to multiply by a negative 2? 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then times by negative 2 again gives me positive 16. Times by negative 2 gives me negative 32. We can see that we have a constant ratio. So let's have a look at this question over here. So we have this question should be question number 2. So if I'm going from 16 to 8, either I'm minusing 8, right? And then if I would go across again, let me just change to red. If I had to go across again and say minus 8, we should be getting 0, but we don't. So it's definitely not a constant difference. Let's see if I divide. So 16 divided by 2 gives me 8. So divided by 2, that gives me 8. If I go 8 divided by 2 should give me 4. And if we keep going, you'll see that if I divide 4 by 2, I get 2. And therefore, you can see that it's actually a constant ratio, right? So we're having division. So let's go ahead and say, answer the question. So what is the constant ratio? So for number 1, our constant ratio would be multiplying by negative 2. And for number 2, my constant ratio would be dividing by 2. If we had to answer the question, what is the fifth term? So that's pretty simple. You just go ahead and calculate that. So over here, if we had to times by a negative 2, we would get positive 64. And over here, if we had to divide by 2, we would get a half over here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, in this question, obviously it would be the sixth term because there are already 5 terms. So for number 2, I'm just going to put in brackets. This is the sixth term. And we are going to get the answer of a half. Okay, and then if we had to describe the rule in our own words, again, you do the similar thing with the constant difference. You take your constant ratio and you put it into your answer. So you would say, for number 1, we would say multiply the previous term by, we can say negative, I won't spell out the whole thing, negative 2, and then 2, and then for number 2, we're going to say divide the previous term, and this time it is by just 2. All right, so that is kind of how we go about constant difference and constant ratio and a few questions that have been asked. Now, let's have a look at what happens when we have a question that says, determine the general rule. Now, you're thinking, Mr. Hing, what does general rule mean? Well, this is what they mean, guys. You'll see this in your classes, in your lessons. This is going to pop up a lot in grade 8 and 9. So what they are wanting you to do is to determine almost like a formula and what they call a rule for a specific pattern. And this is going to apply to constant difference at the moment. Okay, so what you need to do first, guys, just listen to my steps. The way that we get our formula, how we write Tn equals, and then how we know what number needs to go here and what number needs to go here, let's follow along on how to do that. So, step number 1, you want to determine what is the constant difference, okay, for the pattern. So the pattern, obviously, we are adding 8 over here and adding 8 over there. So my constant difference is 8. So guys, this is key and very vital for this answer. So the constant difference that you get in your answer, you are going to put in your formula over here. All right. Then the next question that you ask is very, very important, right? So there should be a minus sign there. So the next question is very important in order to get our number that needs to come over here. Because when they ask us to determine the general rule, it needs to be in this format. Tn equals a number, n plus, and then another number, or minus another number. So let's have a look and see how we're going to get this. Once you have gotten your constant difference, you write it down over here, okay? And then you're going to ask yourself, what must I add or subtract to get the first term number in my pattern, right? From the constant difference. So I'll say it again. What must I do to get my first term number, which is 4, from a constant difference of 8? So basically it's saying, what must I do to 8 to get to my first term number, which is 4? Okay, so obviously what must we do? We are going to end up subtracting. We're going to say minus 4, and that is how we do it. So your final answer to answer the question, determine the general rule, it's going to be Tn equals 8n minus 4. So that is how we do that question. Okay, let's have a look at this question over here. It's all related. The question is using the general rule. So using the rule that we just got, the formula that we just got over here, the rule. Determine the value of term 80. So guys, what happens over here when they give you the term? There's something very important that we need to do, and that's called substitution. So what does that mean? It means we're going to replace something with something else. So you write down your general rule that you got, Tn equals 8n minus 4. And then you're going to take this 80 and put it in place of this n here. And that is why I said we're going to substitute. So let's have a look at what that means and how it looks. So we're going to write Tn equals 8. Then we're going to substitute 80 over there. Right? And then we're going to minus 4 because minus 4 comes from here. So Tn will equal 636. Okay, 636. So that means, sorry, I should have explained this a little bit better in detail. So when we have a look at, let's say for instance, when we have a look and we use our formula or our general rule, the n represents the positioning or the term, right? The Tn represents our values or the term number. Okay, I just need to make that clear because what that means is that when I put for term 80, that means not the value but the positioning. So term 80, when I put it into my general rule, when I substitute it in for n, my Tn, my value is going to be 636. So the value, let me just write it over here. So if I had a term of 80, the value or the term number would be 636. I hope that makes sense. Let's have a look at the last question. It takes a little bit longer. So again, it's going to be incorporated in the few questions above, the couple questions above. It says, using the general rule, once again, determine which term will have the value of 1596. So what you do again, guys, is you write your general rule that you got, minus 4. And now in this case, we are going to write the 1596. This represents the term number, not the term. So this is going to come in place of my Tn, and we're going to substitute it in there, but not in place of the n this time. Okay, so I hope you can see the difference between the question, this question over here, where we took 80 and put it in place of the n, and in this case over here, we're going to put the 1596 in place of the Tn. So I'm going to write 1596, because now it has been substituted, it's been replaced, is equal to 8n minus 4. And now we got to solve. We got to find out what n is. So this takes a bit of algebra knowledge. So we need to get rid of the minus 4. So we're going to add 4 plus 4 to get rid of it. And whatever you do to the one side of a equation, you have to do to the other side. So we're going to say 1596 plus 4 equals 8n. So let's simplify that. It'll give us 1600 is equal to 8n. And now how do we get rid of the 8 so that we just have our n? We need to divide by 8. Because 8 divided by 8 is 1. And that will get rid of that. Or just leave us with 1n, which is pretty much just n. And if you do that to the one side of the equation sign, you have to do it to the other side. So therefore, n, if we simplify this, it will become 200. So if I look in my pattern, when my value over here, which is 1596, my term we determined would be 200. Okay, guys, so that was a long video. If it was a bit confusing, maybe pause and grab a glass of water and then come back and just re-look at it, re-listen, and yeah, do a few questions by yourself and see if you can do it. But with all that being said, guys, I hope it was helpful at least, and I'll see you in the next one.